All right, welcome to Season 3 of The Notice. I'm TJ Houske, Chief Executive Officer here at OTAVA. And if I haven't met you, it's nice to virtually meet you. I'm excited about this season and particularly this transition for OTAVA here in our journey and for what we've been doing here at our organization. So first, couple of big things since we last talked last year. We have celebrated elevations for new leaders taking new assignments, and we've also celebrated successes for people that we care about elsewhere. So Melissa Locke, who is my co-host here on The Notice, and hopefully she'll be able to continue in part throughout the season. We would love that. Took a new leadership role with another company, not in our sector. And it was a great opportunity for her. We know that was a huge calling in her life to go be a change agent somewhere else. And that's one of the big things that I really try to emphasize here at OTAVA is it's not just about technology, it's about great people and developing leaders to go make a positive impact using the platforms that we have access to, especially leadership. So congratulations to Mo. I miss you already. And then this year at OTAVA, what do we have going on? Well, since the last time we talked, OTAVA, who was in the process, as we mentioned, of starting to do some strategic discussions with partners like Scale Computing, has put together a really unique partnership with the help of Veeam and with the help of Scale Computing. And we have an incredible interview ahead between myself and CEO and co-founder, of Scale Computing, Jeff Reddy. And I'm really excited for you to hear the context of that conversation and the content of that conversation. There's just two guys here in Indianapolis that really have a passion for making a difference through technology, putting our heads together to say, what if? And it's really cool to see that. As a direct partner for Veeam and a reseller, OTAVA, you can see in my background there, was recognized as 2024 Veeam's Partner of the Year in North America. So needless to say, we have been busy and we have converted into productivity. So we're really excited about that. We did it.
We did it. Success.
All right.
First part of the partnership complete.
All right. Well, welcome to The Notice. Thank you so much for coming out.
Of course. Happy.
It's been a journey.
A little bit.
So we're here. So Jeff Reddy, CEO Scale Computing. Why don't you share a little bit about your story? I've been blessed and have had the benefit of getting to hear the whole story. Like, mom, dad.
Yeah, how much time do we have is the question.
right. But I mean, this is really cool. We're going to talk about throughout the episode partnership, where we're going, where your business is going. But I think it's rooted first in just your vision and your tenacity to keep going after it.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, Scale Computing provides a platform for running applications, right? And whether those applications are in a data center or on site or at the edge, as we now call it, which is a fancy way of saying not in a data center.
Right.
It's a platform for managing, deploying, and running those applications. Originally, fundamentally, an alternative to VMware, but it's much more than that now. With the rise of Edge and the rise of AI at the edge in particular, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But that's what the company does, and we've been at it for about 16 years. So it's a more important position to be in now, to be an alternative to VMware than maybe it was 16 years ago. But it's good for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, have you seen? It's been interesting, right? 16 years in technology, that's a long time.
A very long time.
Right,
yes.
right. So we're watching the, kind of skate to where the puck is when you first started and what you thought. I mean, heck, you invented the term hyper-converged infrastructure, right?
That's right.
So why don't you talk a little bit about what maybe you saw when you started, but then what the market has done, which is really amplified, I think, the relevancy of scale even more now than when you first started it.
Yeah, I mean, originally, and it's funny, right? Because 16 years later, we're now doing what I thought we would have done 16 years ago. So the idea was that we could use artificial intelligence technology to augment and change the way IT infrastructure was managed, and really use AI to fix problems automatically, right? That was the whole premise of the company. And most problems in IT are pattern recognition problems, which are exactly what AI can do. Now, interestingly enough, when we went to market with this concept, and ultimately, again, VMware was, I thought, that's what you use to run infrastructure at the time. And so, with AI, we're going to be an alternative to that. and there was very limited, I would say, interest at that point. But what we found was there was tremendous interest around using the same technology in data storage. And so we kind of launched as a data storage company. And then as the market evolved and I saw the opportunity to kind of bring the applications themselves into the same infrastructure as the storage, which is getting back to kind of what the original vision was, that's where the term hyperconvergence actually came from. It was converged infrastructure with the hypervisor, hence hyperconverged infrastructure. So we went from a pure storage company to hyperconverged infrastructure and ultimately to edge computing and what we do today.
Yeah, well, and you're modernizing even now, right? So we talked a little bit about what's going on with VMware Broadcom, right? And so it's opened up new opportunity on really two fronts, like the first being, pricing has become not competitive necessarily, and I don't mean that wrong, it's just become expensive, right? And so customers are saying, how do I do more with less? But at the same time, I think it's opened the door for you to also now be a data center virtualization provider and solve a little bit of that. So how are you pivoting to balance where you already were in edge and then what you want to now be in data center to put the two together?
Yeah, so I think the way I like to think about it is scale computing's not just a VMware alternative, it's an upgrade, right? And there's been a lot of technology that's been developed by us and others over 16 years that never made its way into the VMware stack. So if you were just heads down with VMware in your data center, there were a lot of things happening that you didn't even know were possible, like the integration of AI into the system. Like things such as being able to kind of centrally manage and deploy applications across the infrastructure like you would in the cloud. So think more how you might manage your cloud infrastructure, but doing so across one or multiple data centers or across tens or hundreds or thousands of edge locations.
Yeah.
And that's a real difference and something that's fundamentally different between Scale and Broadcom VMware.
Yeah. Yeah, if you tie it all together, like edge, data center virtualization, when you look at simplicity of what you're trying to accomplish, what's in your mind when you look at today's buyer and they look at Scale? What is that leading thing that says, I really want to take Scale more serious? Like, this is why this is interesting. What do you think that is from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One is, do you have applications where high availability matters, right? The AI infrastructure I talked about is really designed to deliver high availability, right? Things go wrong. Is it important that the applications keep running, or is it okay that things go down and a human is going to have to go in and fix it? I mean, sometimes that is the case, right? But if high availability matters, then Scale is going to get your attention because that AI system can make it highly available. The other thing is that's coupled with ease of use, which may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but that same AI system is taking care of problems, is augmenting the way in which you manage the system. And so, rather than staring at your VMware console all day long to manage the infrastructure, you kind of let the infrastructure manage itself. And so that means you maybe could do it with a smaller team or really elevate your IT admins into thinking more about the business and the business problems and the applications themselves, not babysitting infrastructure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I like to connect the dots for folks. We've talked a lot about the technology, but then certainly it's use cases, right? Like where do you see? So leaving customers' names out of it, and you can't toot your own horn because then it just sounds wrong. But obviously Scale has seen massive growth, and particularly in the last couple of years, and also notoriety. You guys have climbed with large enterprise wins, Fortune companies, blue chip. So there's this feel, I think now more than ever, similar to other companies out there that we'll talk about later, that maybe people didn't take it as serious 3-4 years ago or 5 years ago, and now they're like, man, I keep hearing this name pop up, right? So connecting the dots for folks on the technology side to some of your use cases, what's 1 or 2 use cases in industry that you're saying, here's a great example of where our technology has solved problems?
Yeah, so I'll give you 2, kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So on one hand, in this world of edge computing that we talked about, where you think, okay, I have, again, dozens, hundreds, thousands of potential locations. So great examples would be large retailers, right? So a retail company might have 1,000 or 5,000 locations, and historically they've the infrastructure that runs on site at those locations is kind of an afterthought. Like, well, there's the point of sale system, there's some video surveillance, I've got a couple of standalone servers and they do their thing. But with the rise of AI and now thinking, okay, I'm not only going to have this cool, maybe you went to a trade show and you saw this application that you said, I must have this, it's going to change my business. If you immediately kind of go back to that traditional way of deploying infrastructure, which is stand up a server and deploy it, well, what happens in 6 months or in 9 months or a year when you find the next AI application and the one after that? And you quickly realize, well, the most expensive part of deploying and managing that infrastructure was putting guys in a white panel van and sending them out to the site, right? If you can eliminate that by putting in basically mini data centers in these locations and centrally managing them as you would the cloud, it really changes how quickly you can deploy applications, what kinds of applications, what's the threshold of even trying something, right? You can imagine if I have this huge barrier to simply deploying infrastructure, right? The return I have to expect out of a new application has to be so high that it's a very small subset. On the other hand, if I can click a button and deploy the new app, it really changes things. So that's one example. Another example is that we see a lot in centralized deployments. So think, large manufacturing, industrial type, centers might be, a single location, a factory that builds widgets of some kind. And we see, not only that, the Broadcom, VMware pricing problem that you referenced, but, that pricing problem exposes the opportunity to say, okay, what else is out there? They see the AI and they start thinking, oh, well now if the system will manage itself, not only might I deploy infrastructure in that central data center, but I might actually put little pods of infrastructure on the factory floor. Again, running AI type applications or otherwise. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great, Jeff. So let's switch gears a little bit. So we'll go from technical to scale as a business, right? So when you think about what you've been able to build and lead with a great team, you have a fantastic team.
Thank you.
Tell people a little bit about scale in general. So you are partner driven. You have a very large ecosystem, right?
Yep.
Why don't you give people a bit of an understanding of here's Scale the company and who we are?
Yeah, I mean, so as you mentioned, we are partner driven, so we go to market with our partners, like OTAVA, right? And because our partners are most often who has that direct connection with the end user, the customer, right? And they know something about their business. They know when things are changing and they're looking for other solutions that we might be a fit for. Right, and because of that, one of the things that we really strive for philosophically is something that we call best ever, right? And the concept of best ever is something that I and my co-founders instituted at the very beginning of the company. It's the very first page of our employee handbook and the training, which is, and this may seem a stretch, but this is what it is. It's if our end customers, right, and our partners, on the day they retire personally, if some news agency came up with a microphone and said, hey, before you walk out of the building, tell us who was the best vendor or partner that you worked with in your entire career, technology, buying paper, whatever it may be. We want the answer to be Scale Computing. That's the objective, right? And so that means it's the product, it's the pre-sales experience, it's technical support on the back end, post-sales, it's the whole thing, right? The whole thing. We want to be that best ever experience. And I think that philosophy changes the way in which we even think about everything that we do, right? Every time that we interact with a customer or a partner, it's another opportunity to deliver that best ever experience. And we want to answer the phone with a human being within 30 seconds, right? As opposed to making you go into the call tree or whatever, right? It's little things like that. We don't send calls to a call center in a very low cost country where they don't understand what you're doing. They're just taking names and numbers, right? We don't do that, and so it really just changes everything. It also means that we often go the extra mile for our customers and our partners because, let's face it, in tech, the problems can be very complicated and there can be a lot of finger pointing. And so we will say, well, all right, we know that the problem isn't caused by scale, but let's help the customer or the partner solve the problem anyway, right? Again, trying to get that interview at the end of the day. So.
No, that's awesome. And you've evolved, right? And as you build this business and you've watched your couple hundred employees now, you guys are Indiana based, so Hoosiers through and through.
That's right.
Which is great, right?
Yep.
But when you look at where the business was, and I think there was a season you mentioned where folks kind of associated Scale to a hardware company, right?
Yes.
And less software.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because you're much more than maybe what people used to think. And that's like any business, you evolve.
Right. Yeah, so often, not always, but often when people are buying Scale, and especially historically as infrastructure, they were buying an appliance, which simply meant, and we're a software company, right? So it simply meant our software was pre-installed on some hardware, Dell, Lenovo, Supermicro, whatever it may be.
Right.
And it was a time when, in order to get a customer to consider switching, primarily from VMware, right, to consider switching, they would only consider that switch when they were refreshing all of the infrastructure. And so kind of in this vein of best ever, the idea was, all right, well, let's do everything for them. We'll change the servers, the storage, and the software all at once. Well, now, as the market's evolved, suddenly people say, oh, I bought this hardware 6 months ago, a year ago, but I do still want to look at a software change. Right. And so we step into that. And ultimately, right, I mean, that's better for us because we're not a hardware company. We will help support the hardware because that's what we do, right. But we are through and through a Indianapolis-based software company.
Right,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Well, congratulations. I know
Thank you.
From my perspective, when I look at it, OTAVA as a cloud service provider, a legacy managed services provider, what Scale was representing, first, like-minded people, wanting to work with folks that see things the same way of how do we use technology to solve business problems, not to sell technical solutions, right?
Yeah.
I think Scale has done a fantastic job of that. But the other part of it that was really interesting to me was that, and it resonated of best ever, of, we aspire to do the very best that we can. And I always tell folks that we're in the awkward teenager stages in developing our business, and yet we're 30 years into it, where a lot of times it's, we have the right intention, but not necessarily the outcome that we're after. So we might not always get it right, but we'll make it right, right? It's kind of how we focus.
Yep.
But as an MSP and a CSP classically, what I want to say to everybody that tunes in, that looks, is this is a great product to add if you're a thought leader in this space, to say we want to open up new opportunity. And edge computing, I really do believe if you associate name recognition and value, Scale is it. You're the leader. You're the pioneer in that space. So I'm excited that we'll be able to take your product and the hard work that you guys have done, and as a reseller, go out there and add what we hope to be one of your largest partners and thought leaders in the space to solve problems. So this is really cool.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. I mean, where there's so much alignment is, your objective and our objective is to allow that customer to think about something besides the infrastructure.
Right.
Right? Like help them make their business work, right? And making their business work doesn't mean babysitting, babysitting the data center, babysitting the software. That's not what, it's not what the owner of that company is hoping for, right? They want to sell more of whatever it is they do, and we're trying to empower that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we run infrastructure companies, and even we don't want to deal with it. So,
it can be a pain.
It can be difficult. So, well, thank you. This is awesome. We are incredibly excited and honored to have the partnership. We know that we're going to have some fun together and solve some customer problems. So this will be a lot of fun. So
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So why don't you share a little bit about what you're excited about in this next release for what you're doing within your software and maybe some of the new challenges that you're solving?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we announced and is now available is what we call application lifecycle management, which is a long-winded way of saying you can now manage your actual end applications through the Scale platform in the same way that we manage the infrastructure. So you centrally can log into Fleet Manager, which is our central portal base, and you can say, hey, here's an application that I need deployed at 1 or 10,000 sites. And anytime I change this kind of master copy, I want you to update all those other applications, or to integrate with, with a Git repository if you're into GitOps and things like this. But ultimately, it's like, okay, just like Scale has been known for a long time of using its technology to automate the administration of infrastructure. We now take that all the way through to the end application, right? And effectively, what it means is it makes all of that infrastructure transparent, right?
Yeah.
You're no longer even thinking about it. You just I just want this application to run, and you're good to go.
That's awesome. Big lift. Has it been one of those you've been working on for a while when you think about the development effort?
Big, yeah, it's a big one, right? And when I've talked to analysts from Gartner to others, they said not only is this something completely unique to Scale, but it's something that my friends over at VMware have been trying to figure out for years and years and haven't gotten right. And so we're really excited about that. I mean, to underscore how big of a deal it is, I mean, internally this was known as Project Kraken. So it was like release the Kraken was kind of the thing. So we're very excited about Kraken and what it can do.
I like it. We need shirts.
Yeah, there you go.
We need apparel. We need apparel. That'll be great. Well, so this is cool. So this is a big step of evolution within your platform.
Yeah.
When you think about kind of where you're going, starting to step into some of the data center. And usually with data center is things like advanced distributed switching, right? Or different firewalling, those kinds of things. How are you guys thinking about that? Are you starting to look at the data center side of this too and be a little bit more intentional in there? Or is that one of those things where it's secondary? And I don't think it's bad either way, it's just more educational.
Yeah, no, we think about it all kind of holistically. Well, one of the surprising things that we found as we've as Scale kind of reached out into the world of edge computing and started developing technology there is that in every instance, or at least nearly every instance, the technology that we thought we were developing for the edge ends up having the exact same implications at the centralized data center as well. And so, the Project Kraken is no exception, right? The ability to manage those applications, centrally applies, even if it's, I have one cluster, right, or just a couple of clusters. The thing is that what we ultimately aim to do is to turn the on-prem infrastructure, whether it's data center or whether it's edge, into something that looks and behaves like a private cloud, right? And the reason is, and the reason that we move into the world of applications here, is that when you think about the public cloud generally today, most applications that exist in the cloud were developed for the cloud, right? It wasn't, they were, early on, they were lifted and shifted. They moved from the traditional data center to the cloud, but ultimately now they're in the cloud, and that's what we see happening here. It's like, okay, if you have infrastructure that makes it trivially easy to deploy applications and manage them, and all of that underlying infrastructure becomes transparent, well, then you can really accelerate how quickly you deploy apps, what kind of apps. And so the tooling of being able to do, oh, here's a firewall you can click a button and drop in. Here's a database you click a button and drop in like you would in a cloud environment is key. So.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, for purposes of education, I know some folks are going to be joining and they're new. Maybe they haven't even attended platform. They popped onto our podcast and were interested in what's this whole Scale thing about. What does that look like for somebody that has, to your point before, sunk cost capital, and they're saying, I want to maximize that investment that I've already made, but I'm still very interested in Scale. What are the opportunities versus limitations so that somebody could really think more intentionally about how to introduce Scale to their current footprint and start to learn?
Yeah, so, fundamentally, number one, Scale is a software company, right? And we're often mistaken to be a hardware company because we do offer appliances, which is just our software pre-bundled. However, that doesn't mean that you can't use your existing infrastructure, right? And now, of course, we have a hardware compatibility list. You need to have hardware which matches what's been certified. But even if you have hardware and you say you take a look at our website, you're like, I don't have what matches, you should still reach out to us because we have different versions and we have trial versions. You're welcome to give it a shot, right?
Awesome.
And see if it all works. And we continue, and honestly, the way in which we expand that compatibility list is because people say, oh, I just bought a whole bunch of server X, and can we use that? And so we can do that. In the event that maybe you have gear that's just too old, we do have trade-in programs, and that's where the appliances come into play, right? We have partnerships with all of the hardware vendors. We do move a lot of hardware at Scale, so we can probably get better pricing than most end users, and so we can help work those relationships. So.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say last for folks listening that has been really interesting to OTAVA is you're not a small company anymore, right? So you're hitting a next level growth clip.
and yet we're able to have conversations that still feel like small business relationships, right? And I think that is something that gets undervalued when you do look at Nutanix or VMware. You know, they're equally manufacturers of their software, just like you are. But I hope that what the viewers see and what partners see is that you represent what your team has also provided, which is a really personalized experience, ease of access to say, hey, I'm really interested, but I want to learn more. So thank you. I think you guys do a really good job of that.
Thank you very much. I mean, it fundamentally, you know, I still view Scale the same way as I did when it was a startup in my basement, and I'm still doing the same thing. I mean, as you know, and you know, all my partners and customers know, at the bottom of every email I send, it has my personal cell phone number on it. My email is cleverly jeff@scalecomputing.com. Anybody can contact me. We try to be, super available and, bring, as you know, what we call the best ever experience to our customers and partners.
Yeah. All right, well, we went from a lunch date to a business partnership 12 months later.
Right, there we go. It's just that easy.
So there we have it, right?
Yeah.
You wish every meeting would result in that. They don't.
Exactly.
but it's been great. Well, let's talk about partnership. I know that it's a big word for both of us. It was centrally how we started this.
Yep.
Of like, hey, we think there's some synergy here. We're mutually aligned. But I'll let you go from your perspective. And I've said this before, so I'll say it on camera. That it's Scale is your baby. It's your brainchild, and I want to honor the work you put into it. I came to this relationship with one goal, which was, can I add value? Not what can you do for OTAVA, but what can we do in partnership? And I think we've maintained that throughout and have gotten to a place now that we have some really cool things, going on. But why don't you talk about it from your perspective?
Well, I think fundamentally, if you have alignment culturally between potential partners, that it really that's what makes the partnership happen, right? And I think back to you originally had lunch with Dusty Kokenberg, who works for Scale, and he's been at Scale. I don't know, he might be employee number like 15 or something. He's been at Scale for a long, long time. And I remember, he came back from that lunch. He said, hey, you really need to meet this TJ guy, right? I think you guys would hit it off. And so I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I trust him. I'm like, okay. But you're right. I mean, so often, you end up meeting people and there's a logical potential business partnership, and maybe you can do something, but it doesn't have the same juice behind it as if there's cultural alignment. And so you guys had very similar views in terms of how do we solve customer problems together, how can you make Scale successful, how can Scale make OTAVA successful, and just no hidden agendas, right? Just we're pretty transparent guys, so
no, I appreciate it. It's been fun. From my perspective, one of the things that we don't really talk about, but that I really love, is that we're both Indiana based. And that's a passion for me, especially now having my kids born here and raised here. Is like, how can I give back to the state and to the community in this way? And I think that's another area for this partnership that's really unique, is that both of us are trying to do good in this market and make tech a really fun thing. And I think that's what this partnership is also going to help us do. But to your point, cultural alignment. I love what you guys have focused on with Best Ever, always making it right, focusing on the customer. I also like that you're still an entrepreneur at heart. And I think that goes a long way, because we've seen some of your competition, and your competitors are folks I resell, right? So our roles are distinct in nature, but if folks understood the symbiotic nature of what partnership represents for a reseller to an OEM, in this case, I think it's absolutely paramount. And I think that you have demonstrated that not only in this partnership, but in just who Scale is. You're partner driven, 2,500 plus partners in your ecosystem. Right, so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to. I mean, we're fun. We're innovation driven, right? And we want to innovate. That's why I started the company. I had an idea, and my co-founders and I did this thing. And I think what can get lost as companies get bigger is the founders leave and things change, and you lose that innovative edge, and it just sort of becomes a business. Right. And you don't approach OTAVA that way, right? You're trying to innovate and to solve problems, and again, that's what makes it fun. So.
It's a unique characteristic indeed. So excited about the partnership.
Yep. Thank you so much. Yep. Me too.
So we we just finished at Platform.
Yep.
Your biggest event. I'm sure you had a good time.
It was awesome.
We joke. We spend a lot of money on food.
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of food that goes around, yeah.
A lot of food when you look back on that event, right?
Yeah.
But we had an incredible opportunity to create a really significant announcement, right?
Right.
And rather than me talk about it, I know how much sweat equity that you put into it since day one and what your initial vision was. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Like what did we announce, but why does it matter? And what does it offer for not only your existing customers, your partners, but those that are still to come in both categories?
Yeah, I mean, the announcement itself, of course, was announcing the support of Scale in the Veeam platform, with OTAVA as our distribution partner to make that happen. So it's really a three-way partnership. We, as you know, but for our viewers here, we've been working on this for well over a year together.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something I've been pursuing with Veeam for the better part of a decade plus. So we're happy to do that. I mean, fundamentally, you know, Veeam has been, you know, the #1 requested ecosystem partner by Scale customers for a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, Fundamental is a dominant player in, you know, data protection for VMware. And so with all the disruption with Broadcom VMware, as customers are looking to move to platforms such as Scale, you know, they get very excited about Scale, and then they start thinking, okay, what about the rest of my ecosystem? And the very first thing they think of is backups, right? #1. And they say, okay, well, what am I going to do with, you know, 10 years of backup material, and can we use it? So having this, you know, integrated support, Scale as a hypervisor now supported with Veeam is fantastic.
Yeah, it was a long road.
It was a long road for sure.
But we got there. What are you most excited about in it? Like when you think about going back to your thesis of best ever, right?
Yep.
And we know that customers, you know, to your point, backups are everything.
Yep.
And similar to the conversation last time, we said, hey, when you forklift infrastructure, that's one of those moments where it's like, okay, maybe now there's opportunity for Scale to participate. In this case, you know, it's equally big because we're saying maybe there's petabytes of backup data.
Right.
Right. And so what are you most excited for based on what you know? People have said for a long time, we want this. What does it do for them?
Yeah, there's two things. I mean, one, it just tears down a fundamental objection, right? Which is like, hey, it bothers me because I'll see customers who really want to make the move, and I know that they'll be much happier with the Scale Computing platform than they have been, but just that lingering, what am I going to do with all my old backups, right, just gets in the way, and so it just is an anchor to their progress, right? So knocking that down and being able to say, no, like that'll all just work is great. The other thing, though, which I think is super cool, is now the migration path becomes much easier, meaning all you need to do to migrate to Scale from that VMware environment is restore your backup to Scale, and you're done, right? So that's really awesome, right? And we have many ways to do migrations, but that one is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. And I think, you know, when we started talking about it a year ago, and certainly you've been working on it a lot longer, as you mentioned, you know, my big observation was, it was kind of interesting, but Scale, for the longest time, you're creating, you know, awareness, and then I use the word a lot, but relevancy of, hey, we're a player in this space, just the same as OVH or VMware Broadcom or Microsoft, Google, right?
Yep.
And now I think Veeam attached to that, which was interesting. They kind of went through the same journey. There was years where Veeam coming up, folks were like, is this an enterprise class solution?
Right.
You know, where are they? But you have two really great juggernaut software companies that they don't have an edge partner, now they do. Mm-hmm. And you didn't have, you know, really what we would consider to be the tier 1 provider, you know, for advanced data protection. The two together, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that was, you know, besides the overlay of the whole Broadcom VMware thing, I mean, that was fundamentally what shifted, right? As we were joking, you know, I've been working on it for 10 years, right, to make it happen. But, you know, over that 10 years, Scale emerged as the leader in edge computing. And so, you know, the way a partnership works is everybody has to win, right? Yeah. And so we solve a challenge for Veeam, which is, well, how do we take our data protection to the edge?
Right.
Veeam solves a challenge for us, which is how do we get support for those old backups, whether they're data center or edge? And then, OTAVA fills the critical role of kind of being the conduit that makes it all happen as the distribution partner.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. I know this has been something that the ecosystem has spoken and screamed loudly of, hey, give us this access. And it was always, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, we're working on it, right? So super thankful to Veeam for finally saying, hey, let's look at this as a priority. We really recognize that, we appreciate that. And then equally Scale for trusting OTAVA to say, hey, we want to partner with you and we think this is an opportunity. And for us, when I looked at this, I saw two fronts. I said, hey, we want to sell Scale. We had been a reseller for well over a year, if not a couple of years, and frankly, a slow grower, if any, right? And so we recognize we want to do better in that ecosystem and recognize we were running into similar objections, which is here we are, a very large top 6 Veeam provider in the ecosystem, and yet we can't sell that with this solution, right? So the two together, I'm really excited for what it represents, and I'm confident it's going to make a big splash.
It's great. I appreciate all the support from you guys to make it happen. I mean, you had that frontline view of seeing, okay, I see customers who want Scale, but there's this barrier, right? So, and then because of your long-standing partnership with Veeam already, you're able to help connect some dots.
It's going to be fun.
It's great.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, I hope you enjoy the interview. We look forward to giving you more details on the partnership here soon, and certainly excited about what this represents for all of the parties involved, Scale Computing, OTAVA, and Veeam. So enjoy.
That'll be a minute or two worth of good stuff in there then. So
They gotta find something. 60 seconds of usable content.
Right.